Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is February 13th, and right now we are looking at the visible satellite imagery. We got BC, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho here. Check out the next system out over the Pacific Ocean. You can see some lightning strikes associated with it, and the frontal system off the coast of California. Looks like we kicked off a couple of strikes actually, and some of the low-topped activity here off the coastline. Interesting. But we're going to dry out here for a couple days. This next system will ride up the Oregon coastline here and try to pull some cold air out into BC and western Washington, and chance for some lower elevation snowfall. Very tricky forecast incoming, and we'll take a look at those details as we go through the video here today, and we'll take a look at the extended forecast as always. Daylight savings time, it's coming March 10th. Look at that. After 7 p.m. sunsets, definitely something to get excited about. And look, by the time we get to March 17th, over 12 hours of sunlight for each day, and then just increasing as we go on in through June as well. So a nice graphic there from the National Weather Service, Portland, Oregon. Cascade snow. Look at some of these amounts across the Oregon Cascades. Not a bad snowmaker here, and it should spread some of that up across the southern Washington Cascades, maybe a few inches further north. We'll check that out here in a moment, and you can see 1 to 2 feet for the Cascade Pass, as heavy snow as possible. This is again for Wednesday and Thursday, February 15th. We looked a little bit further south, Crater Lake, foot and a half, mainly for the higher terrain. I-5 should be all right here, but it's always just a good idea when you're driving across I-5 through the Siskiyou Summit to just be winter prepared, have that stuff in your car ready to go. But it should be okay this round. Snow level is relatively high, and there could be some gusty winds out there as well. Now, Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to turn things offshore. You can see the Okanagan River Valley here, the gap winds kind of below and maybe up towards 40 miles per hour locally. And you can see the northeast component here across Washington, Idaho, and British Columbia as we turn things offshore. And you see some gusty winds across the Cascades as well. If we look at the snow potential here for Spokane, they do talk about a little bit maybe coming in here, and some of the models have a little bit better totals. There's going to be some warmer air as you go further south here, but it doesn't take much to make things slick. And you see the bigger amounts across some of the Cascades. Stevens maybe 3 to 4, Washington 1 to 2, and some bigger amounts south of Lookout Pass, but 3 to 4 for Lookout Pass as well. And some of the Blue Mountains getting up over 6 inches of snowfall locally there also. Now taking a look at things, you can see we got Washington and Oregon here. This is 100-meter wind speeds on the left. I got sea level pressure here on the right. So this is one thing we kind of have going for us in this setup, is this low pressure center is going to come in a little bit south of western Washington, British Columbia. So some areas are going to get a bit of cold air pulled through. As you can see, the easterly winds, the offshore component going on across the Pacific Northwest. And you can see the low pressure center right there off of Astoria. Now, as we go on in through Wednesday night and Thursday, you can see that pressure center rise here, and it kind of keeps things still offshore here as this low starts to weaken and really get absorbed off the coastline and kind of continue this easterly wind as we go on in through Friday morning, and then another frontal system starts to approach, which will warm us up as we go through Friday afternoon coming up here. I'll show you some of those temperatures here in a moment. Now, the time of some potential snowfall is as this low pressure center gets a bit closer and starts to spread its moisture back up over some of this drier, modified Arctic air that tries to make its way out into BC and Washington. And how far north will that moisture spread? Are we going to get temperatures cold enough to bring it down to snow? It's a very marginal event. It may remain just above freezing for many areas here, and probably not going to be sticking too much on the cement itself. Now, if you want a nice, affordable home weather station to check out the temperature during some of these marginal snow events at your house, click on that link down below to save 10% off. It updates every 3 seconds. It's got some really nice graphs, and it stores all the data for you in the cloud. Now, looking at the 8-meter wind speed on the high-resolution model on the left versus dew point temperature, this is a great way to look to see what kind of air mass is coming in. And when a modified Arctic air mass moves in, you can see it there. See how that dry air moves in here? And then you can see it coming into eastern Washington, although we don't have a lot of cold air banked up in here in eastern Oregon to pull through the gorge for this round. It will get a little bit chillier, but we're not looking at sub-freezing temperatures for the most part for the Portland metro, maybe back in the gorge here, but you can clearly see the dry air and kind of that cutoff here with the low pressure center off the Oregon coast, and you can see it here in the 80-meter wind speed as well. So let's back this all the way up again, and look at the dew point there for Bellingham, 41. Now watch what happens. As soon as we start to bring that northeast wind down through the Fraser River Valley gap there, look at that, it's dropped off to 30. You can see that drier air starting to make its way into western Washington. That's that mark of that modified Arctic air. And you can see the dew point start to drop for Seattle and places up north, Arlington and Everett, and eastern Washington as well, as that low pressure center continues to try to pull some of that modified Arctic air back into the region. And at the same time, we're going to have precipitation moving north as well. So we could have some evaporative cooling, and if precipitation rates are heavy enough and we get enough of that cooling, you could bring that snow level close to the surface here, at least briefly. But again, the temperatures are going to be so marginal, probably right in the mid 30s or so, maybe briefly down towards 33 or 32 for some select locations. It could, stick on some things, but it does not look like a big icy scenario or snow that's going to last for an extended period of time. This is something interesting to look at too. This is 2-meter dew point depression. So you can kind of see as we go through, we're going through today, this afternoon, not big dew point depression. So this is the difference between the actual surface temperature and the dew point. But look at what happens as this low pressure center starts to pull that colder air through. You can see you got a big difference between your actual outdoor temperature and the dew point. So that's that drier air coming in. And then this low pressure center, you can kind of see it here spinning up over the area. And you see it moisten the air mass. That's also going to bring cooling with it as well. So it's going to drop that temperature and try to get it down into the mid 30s. And again, try to bring some snowfall. It might look kind of crazy out there with some of the snow flying across some of the Puget Sound here. But again, we're not expecting prolonged icy conditions or, accumulated snowfall on I-5, for example, at least not yet. We're going to revisit all this again tomorrow just to kind of make sure, this is forecast is going down to the wire. These snow setups can be extremely fickle and hard to forecast. If we look at the North American model, accumulated positive snow depth change in inches. So this is one thing I like to do. I don't like to just look at 10-to-1 ratio or a Kuchera and just kind of let it fly. And then you're like, oh, we're going to get 6 inches in Seattle. But when you look at the actual accumulated snow depth, it's something different. So here we go. You can see that northeast wind coming down and starting to bring that offshore flow, tries to pull some of that modified Arctic air mass out. You can see the snow starting for the Oregon Cascades as we go through the day Wednesday, backing up there. You can see it starts actually Wednesday morning for the southern Oregon Cascades, starts to move up north. You can see some nice amounts falling, gets into the southern Washington Cascades by the time we get to Wednesday night. And now we head on into Thursday morning, and you can see some of this snow flying here, maybe Highway 12 getting a bit, Olympia, Shelton out there. And we're going to have some of these east winds banking up in towards the Kitsap Peninsula as well. It could prolong some of the snow out there, or at least make it a little bit cooler, or that precipitation might be a little bit heavier here as the winds bank up into the Olympic Mountains. But you can see this. It actually shows a little bit of snow accumulating for some of the Seattle metro here. The Kitsap Peninsula, Whidbey, or Vashon Island. It doesn't show that snow getting too far north, at least in the latest North American model, but that is when it ends. But you can see the heavier amounts kind of right up against Kitsap Peninsula there. But again, you can't just totally rule this out. You might get some snow sticking on cars and grassy surfaces and roofs and whatnot, but it's going to be hard to bring it down and stick it on I-5, for example. Now, looking at total snow depth in inches here versus the European runs, this is last night's versus yesterday afternoon. So if we put this into motion, you'll notice something interesting. There comes Oregon's Cascade snowfall, but you notice it does bring a little bit of accumulating snow, and it actually uptrended on last night's run here for some of the I-5 corridor up into the Puget Sound Metro. Again, maybe Highway 12 and some of the higher terrain out there, Capitol Hill, Capitol Forest, and some of the Gig Harbor area. But look at that. It actually shows some of this accumulating down towards, what is this, just north of Tacoma, maybe Federal Way. It actually shows some of that accumulating there, and maybe places up north. This precipitation gets a bit further up north. That, as you saw, that area is a bit drier up here as well. So you could get some accumulating snowfall, at least briefly. But then you see, as we scroll through Thursday afternoon, you can kind of see this rapidly melting as you go on in through the day Friday also. So yeah, kind of interesting there. But this looks like just a slushy marginal setup at best. Probably not sticking on I-5, but could be sticking on cars and grassy surfaces. Now, if you look at total snow in inches on the national blend of models, let's watch this roll up. Look at that nice snowfall for some of the Oregon Cascades into the Washington Cascades. It's showing not bad there for Stevens Pass, maybe 5 inches. Snoqualmie, maybe 6. Getting up towards North Cascades a bit here as well. And again, it doesn't take much to make things slick. So even if this briefly sticks in some of the roadways, it could be a little tricky. But you can see it also favors Kitsap Peninsula again there as well. And it shows a little bit of snowfall trying to accumulate here across some of the Puget Sound Metro. It doesn't show much getting into eastern Washington, however. Now, taking a look at the 2-meter temperature here, and you'll see as we scroll on into the upcoming, this is about Tuesday night into Wednesday here, and you can see some of these temperatures dropping down towards freezing, at least briefly here, but you see it's a very marginal setup as we go. And then we drive in towards Thursday here, and things are going to be cold enough here. You're down into the lower 30s, but as you can see, you're not looking at widespread sub-freezing temperatures with this event. So kind of want to drive home that point. And then by the time we go on in towards Friday afternoon, you can clearly see that warm up all the way up into the 50s in southwest BC, western Washington, and heck, you're in the upper 50s across a lot of Oregon here as well. Now, taking a look at the extended forecast a bit here. Here's the GFS. Here's our pass. That cold air tries to come out with that weak system, and you can see the ridge just spinning up across British Columbia. Storm track gets shunted down into California. Powerful storm system for them upcoming here in the weekend into early next week. And then the GFS gets a little bit crazy here. It starts to develop the Gulf of Alaska low, and it starts taking some swings at the Pacific Northwest, and especially deep low right off of Haida Gwaii there to the extended. Purely fantasy right now, but it is a kind of nice to see, admittedly, and you can see some other deep lows spinning around here. So I mean, GFS throwing some haymakers in Fantasyland, nothing new and should not be taken seriously right now, but we'll continue to watch that for some trend towards that direction in the future. Is it something that's going to be, trending in the European and the GFS? We'll watch that, plenty of time to look at that. But looking at the GFS, the 16-day precipitation anomaly at the same time, this is last night's ensemble run here. You can see kind of the deficit for Western BC and Western Washington. Better chances, kind of typical El Nino stuff here for California and maybe for some of Southern Oregon as well. Now, taking a look at percent of average precipitation so far since the water year started October 1st, kind of a mixed bag here, but some areas are significantly below average, including some of the Cascades of Washington, but some areas are slightly above as well. Now, if we take a look at the average temperature departure from average for the same time period, you can see much of the west here has been above average, just a select few locations with some below average temperatures. But yeah, interesting stuff here. We got to watch. Tomorrow's going to be a big day here because we're going to start to get probably some better model agreement on just what's going to unfold here. Very marginal temperatures are going to be in place. So while the precipitation is occurring, you might get accumulations on grass and cars and rooftops and wood surfaces and dirt surfaces and whatnot, but it's probably not going to be a dynamic snowfall down towards places like I-5 and a major disruption for the metro area of Seattle. The issue with Portland and south through the Willamette Valleys, there's not a lot of cold air back behind the Cascades here that's going to be pulled through the gorge. And the southerlies are going to be going quite early across the Willamette Valley here as well. You're really not going to get any kind of modified Arctic air down into the Willamette Valley. It's going to stay southerly and it's going to stay rain, whatever falls there for the Willamette Valley during the duration of this. And there's still some question on how far north that precipitation is going to go. Is this low pressure system, they can always track a little bit further north, or maybe it'll get absorbed a little bit further south. So we'll still work out those details as we go through the day tomorrow. Hope you guys are liking these videos. Check out the store too. You can probably see it on the just below here. You can click on that if you want to shop or give me some ideas as well. If you want something in the store, yeah, that'd be great. And I also wanted to say thanks as well to Patty Gifford. She sent these mugs here, and I'll go ahead and show this up and cover my face. But yeah, these are pretty cool. She put a bunch of my sayings on there. I didn't even realize that I said a lot of this stuff. But yeah, really cool mug. She put it all in one mug and she sent me about 10 of them there. And so I may use those designs in the shop. Let me know what you guys think of that as well. I did a post on that in the community portion of the YouTube page as well. So anyway, hope you guys are liking these videos. We'll do this again tomorrow. Lots to watch with tomorrow's forecast as well. We'll try to break it down and see if the models trend up or down with some snowfall potential here in the Pacific Northwest. And we'll do it again then. And I will talk to you guys then.